Hello and welcome to Michael's Minty Music for today. Today we review the Velvet Underground's second album, White Light/White Heat, released in 1968. It's decent, but not spectacular, I would say, overall. This is the track listing, and these are the tracks I added to my playlist. 4 out of 6, so technically most of them, even though it's only 4 tracks. This album is alright, but feels very sparse overall. Side 1 has 2 short songs, one to open and one to close, with 2 sort of normal length songs in the middle. Lady Godiva's Operation is good, but The Gift is just a spoken short story with some background instrumentals, so the side doesn't really have much meat, right? It's 8 minutes long and it takes up almost half the whole album, or half the whole side. In contrast, side 2 is pretty good, even though it only has 2 tracks. It's mostly taken up by the 17-minute long Sister Ray, which is a pretty good experimental psychedelic rock track. They managed to make the song consistently interesting over the whole time, and even really catchy in some places, which is impressive for a 17-minute long song. Definitely one of the standouts of the sort of long song genre here. That, combined with the pretty good opening track of I Heard Her Call My Name, means that side 2 is definitely sort of the primary side of the album, and side 1 is mostly just feels like introduction for it. The overall genre here is a more experimental, instrumental take on their psychedelic pop rock sound of their first album. Particularly Sister Ray has a lot of piano synth sounds in it, which is a little bit more experimental in it. The whole doing a song for a long time is a very experimental thing that they didn't do a ton of in their first album. They mostly chunked it up. The overall style sits somewhere between Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin. Lots of experimentation, but still a heavy reliance on guitar solos to push the song that Pink Floyd just doesn't have. There were 2 singles released before the album, the opening title track, White Light, White Heat, and Here She Comes Now, the last track on side 1. None of these tracks were particularly popular at the time. The Velvet Underground is not a particularly popular radio-friendly band, from what I've heard. My favorite song here, probably I Heard Her Call My Name, the opening track on side 2. It's structured like European Sun from their previous album, which I liked. It's got a great lyrical opening and then sort of a long guitar solo for most of the rest of the song. The opening track is also really good, definitely a standout here, and as I already mentioned, Sister Ray is surprisingly catchy for almost 20 minutes long. I rank this album second out of the 2 Velvet Underground albums I've heard so far. It's definitely not better than their debut, but it's not bad at all. Their first album just has more everything in terms of songs, variety, and quality. Everything they're doing here, they did more of in their first album, so... Also, this album doesn't take my top spot from 1968. That goes to the Beatles' self-titled 1968 album, which is definitely better than White Light, White Heat, and I like better overall. Although that album is pretty bloated, and White Light, White Heat is basically the opposite of that. This only has stuff that is... it has the bare minimum here. Next up is INXS's 1990 album X. It's a sequel to their really amazing 1987 album Kick, and it's not as good as that one, but it's still pretty great. Definitely an acceptable sort of sequel to that. So stay tuned for that, and as always, stay minty.